I did it again, you guys. Rabbit hole, me 3 days straight. And holy cult Batman, when I tell you that you need to settle in with whatever you need for the next little bit here so that you don't miss anything or move or get distracted, I mean it. Also, hi, hello, welcome. If you're new here, I am Sherilyn and I am so glad you found me. If you're not new here, welcome back. Thank you for joining me every single upload, getting stuck in these rabbit holes with me. I love and I appreciate you so much. I'm going to try to make this as easy as possible to follow, but there's a lot that's going on here. We are going to touch on a very suspicious death, cult-like intimidation and control, in my opinion, and disturbing SA allegations against a well-known news anchor in his area, coming directly from his daughter. We've also got lawsuits just being like tossed left, right, and center. I'm going to be trying to dodge and weave those bad boys. But it's, in my opinion, to try to conceal very tangible evidence and questions to investigate very heavy claims. Shout out to Shannon Ashley, who is a blogger who did phenomenal work on this. She has been dealing with a lot of the brunt of threats and lawsuits coming her way for speaking out, and throughout being intimidated to have her work removed or censored, she is doing the right thing and believing and speaking for a teenager who has been begging to have her story told. I really admire the fact that she is a single mother. She's working hard on her blog and she is not backing down, all the while dealing with her own health issues. I will leave her blog linked below so that you guys can go over, read her stuff, support her, send her love. Yeah, I just can't say enough about her work on this. All right, we're gonna get started. I know it's long-winded already, but hang with me. I know a lot of you miss the riddles, and I miss the riddles too. I love having you be able to exercise your brain before we get started, and also being able to just have like a mini break of the heaviness of the content that we go through every week. It also helps me so much to see your answers in the comments. The prep for these videos every week is really, really hard. So I do love to see some lightness blended in with all of the love and support that you already always give everybody and their family that we are talking about every week. So that being said, the riddles are back, and here's your first one back. We're starting with the toughie. It's tough for me, but I know that you guys are all gonna get it, or even if it's not the right answer, it's always like brilliant and adorable, so it counts. All right, here we go. There are 2 in a corner, 1 in a room, 0 in a house, but 1 in a shelter. What is it? All right, let's get started. I want to, again, just give a heavy warning for today's video. We are actually going to be starting with a clip of a young survivor sharing her words to lay out what we are about to get into here. She has a full video statement diving into her experience with SA coming from her father, a father that she and her supporters also believe may know more about her brother's death than being said. This is also a brother who's preparing to testify and protect her in court. So let's just start with a clip of her statement.
My brother died protecting me from my father, Aaron Solomon. My father's a monster. It makes me want to vomit. I've been minimalized, but now I've found my voice to be able to tell you that my father raped me, hurt me, and I'm not going to be a victim of this monster. He's a rapist, he's a molester, he's a liar, and he's a killer.
Heavy stuff. You just heard from Gracie Solomon. Gracie is the daughter and youngest child of Angie Huffings, I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right, and Aaron Solomon. Now, these accusations are obviously very serious and disturbing, and I think it's really important to go behind the scenes and through the history of this family to see how it got to this point. I think that it's very crucial for the story. On the outside, the Solomons appear to be a pretty typical God-fearing family. For 15 years, Aaron Solomon, by the way, you guys, I apologize. I've tried to correct myself so many times, even when writing out my notes. Sometimes I was wanting to write Aaron Samuels, like from Mean Girls. So if that just slips out unconsciously and I don't catch it to edit it out, that's not what I mean. He is not Aaron Samuels. It's Aaron Solomon. Anyways, he was a sports reporter and a news anchor at WSMV TV. He was there for 15 years and left in 2011. There has been rumor floating around the interweb that there wasn't really much of an option for him, and this was like, probably the best look. Nonetheless, the record states he willingly resigned from his position. After his departure, he did a short stint in sports radio and then just left the whole gig altogether, ultimately becoming a financial planner at Merrill Lynch, where he allegedly still works today. Aaron has also served as a volunteer board member from 2006 to at least 2019 for an organization called Our Kids Center. This is described as a Nashville-based nonprofit that provides expert medical evaluation and crisis counseling for victims of child sexual abuse. The reason I bring it up is I just feel like it's worth noting given the serious accusations that are coming from Gracie, who was born in 2006 when he became a board member. So I mean, that could just be coincidence. It kind of made the hair on the back of my neck stick out when I realized that was the year that she was born and the events that Gracie is saying transpired. Now, abuse allegations don't just start with his daughter. They go back decades into the beginning of the relationship of Angie and Aaron. And I think we'll start with the one that appeared to be the catalyst of everything that we're about to go through here. It was an incident that happened on May 9th, 2013. This evening, there was an incident that happened, and Angie claimed that her husband Aaron tried to hang her with a blow dryer cord in the bathroom of their home. She also said that from this event, she also experienced physical abuse where she was struck in the right side of her head and knocked onto her bed. She also has witnesses to this attack. This actually happened right in front of her parents. Her father's response to this, though, and I think is a piece of the puzzle that you need to know to understand maybe why somebody stays in a situation like this as long as they do. So her father's response to this was, a husband can do to his wife what he wishes. The house that Angie grew up in was heavily influenced by religious and emotional indoctrination. She describes that she was raised in a fundamentalist evangelical Christian household. And her own medical reports state that she suffered a lot of abuse at the hands of her parents. There's one report that states that abuse was so severe that she lost hearing in one of her ears. Angie was raised her whole life to live by the rules of the woman biblical fundamentals where you are obedient, submissive, you don't speak back, you obey to your husband and your church. So that lays out a little bit of what was instilled in her. And so after this attack, Angie goes to the hospital. She states that her husband tried to do this to her, and he states that she tried to do this to herself and he tried to prevent it. Since two conflicting stories were coming, the doctors also spoke with Angie's parents, who also went to the hospital, and their stories were noted as being unreliable. The way I'm interpreting that is that they weren't really consistent with what they saw or were trying to support in what appears to be Aaron's narrative. So that day she was admitted to the TriStar Centennial Psychiatric Hospital, and the very next day she was released. The doctor that treated her, he was a doctor named Michael James Murphy, and he states in his report that because of the confusing statements that were being given by all parties, they decided to commit her overnight so they could get a clear read on the situation, and from that they can determine the level of safety she is to herself, others, her children. His report said that he evaluated her extensively that full day, and his impression was that she was telling the truth, that she was in a very, what he referred to as a risky situation at home with her hhusband. His impression was that he appeared to possibly be volatile and violent. And he also stated that he was fishy about her parents, believing that they were an unreliable source about the situation that was going on behind closed doors between Angie and her husband. He made it very clear that he was discharging Angie and that he did not believe that she was a danger or a threat. He also stated that he did not believe that she needed to be on any medication to treat any form of disorder. She didn't appear to have any kind of depression or need further psychiatric treatment. So as soon as she's released from the hospital, Angie immediately files for and was granted a temporary restraining order against Aaron. This was hand delivered to Aaron that next day on May 12th. And upon receiving this, the following day on the 13th, Aaron files for divorce. The day after that, on the 14th, he files and is granted a temporary restraining order against his wife. Going through this next series of events that played out really brought back a lot of triggering memories between some scenarios that played out in my family. I'm going to make it very clear, I'm not referring to my own father. If you're a longtime supporter of the channel, you know that he's always in the comments every single week watching the videos. We love him. I'm not going to put anybody's business out on blast, but I'm just saying that this is a very similar situation that I have witnessed firsthand by somebody very close to me in my family, about manipulation and deceit and control and just the strategic deception of needing to control a narrative that doesn't exist simply to harm another person. What makes this whole situation really disturbing is that Angie had records of her going to the hospital, having a doctor support her version of events, did the right thing. When she leaves the hospital, she goes and files a restraining order to protect herself, her children, and then this web is spun to flip the script. And all of a sudden, her husband files for divorce, and the next day also goes for a protection order against her. The sickening thing that happened here, though, is the judge that presided against this was involved in this group. It's, it's a boys' club. When you're in certain cliques like churches or well connected within the community, you have a lot more resources behind your back. And as much as people want to believe that judges and lawyers and these ethical people are supposed to be unbiased, we've seen time and time again this is not the case. And it certainly was not the case, in my opinion, in this situation. So not only did Aaron go and slide in and be like, well, I'm also going to get a restraining order against you too. And he did, but he also had a protection order against Angie for their children. So she was unable to see the children. And the judge in this case, Judge Philip Smith, ruled that the court did not believe Miss Solomon's testimony that her husband attempted to hang her with a blow dryer cord. He instead believed her husband's version of event, that she tried to take her own life, despite a medical professional stating otherwise. It gets worse. He also said that he was so concerned for the safety of these minor children that they weren't even allowed to have a supervised setting with their mother. A part of this ruling was that Angie was not allowed to see her children until she underwent further psychiatric evaluation and treatment. This was dragged out in the courts for months and months, that she is not seeing her children, who are begging to see her, might I add. And they even recall that they were asking to see her so many times that their father eventually told them that she died. She was no longer here, so that they'd stop asking. Can you imagine the trauma of that? Angie was willing to do whatever she needed to do to get back to her children, though. She complied, went to these psychiatric evaluations. The doctor that treated her, Dr. Freeman, released his full report saying that after all of the time they spent, after reviewing all of the information that he collected, he had no doubt in his mind that Dr. Solomon, I think I forgot to mention that Angie is actually a doctor of pharmacy. He said Dr. Solomon is a fully capable parent. There was absolutely nothing to support the belief that she was a danger to herself or her children. He even brings up that even in the reports that were used as supporting evidence that she was this threat, in none of them did they ever say that she was abusive towards her children, neglectful towards her children, or ever put them in any harmful situation. From this report, the next step in court, Angie was now granted 2 hours of supervised visits a week. This went on into the next year, and throughout this, there are social workers who are testifying, as well as multiple medical experts on behalf of Angie, saying this is really unnecessary. One of her psychiatrists, Dr. Reed, even states in one of his reports that Angie's mental health is excellent. He goes as far as to say as well that her husband has done a masterful job in confusing the court system about his wife's mental health. He also states in the report something very important, but apparently wasn't seen as such in the courts, that there were multiple concerns and complaints surrounding the children's mental health and safety, but it wasn't against Angie. It was actually against Aaron. He believed that both of the children had suffered severe emotional repercussions, and they were very fearful of their father. To take this even a step further, there were other doctors that Angie sought, that she did work with, to just strengthen her case even further, to allow her at least shared custody with her children and not these unnecessary control tactic supervised visits, which again, let's remind everybody, even the social workers were like, this is so unnecessary. One of the psychologists that she saw, Dr. Ruth Smith, even stated that because of everything that was happening, it was doing some harm to Angie. It was unlocking signs and symptoms of PTSD, which she believed started at the beginning of this abusive marriage, but then were coming to light throughout all of this abuse, in my opinion, in court. She also says that there is no evidence or reason why this mother should not be reunited with her children and why she's continuing to have these supervised controlled visits. With all of these experts, with all of this data, testimonies, and statements coming from the children, Judge Smith ruled that the children will be placed in permanent custody with Aaron, but extended Angie's visits to 6 hours once a week. There was a lot going on behind the scenes with the children at school and between their friends. This was obviously, understandably, a very traumatic time for them, but that went so much deeper, and they really opened up and were sharing heavy, heavy things amongst their peers. This in turn trickled to their friends' parents being informed of what Gracie and her older brother Grant were telling them about what their home life was behind closed doors with Aaron, and this is where accusations were very unsettling. Based on the things that Angie was being told, she filed for temporary emergency custody. In this petition, she lays out that her daughter, and this is going to be graphic, feel free to fast forward. She states that Gracie, who is just 8 years old, told her that her father would bathe her and insert what she believed was a bar of soap. She'd also request that he slept in her bed, although she was adamant that she didn't want to. And at 8 years old, he was still insistent that he accompany her to the washroom and wipe for her. At 8, her older brother Grant had friends who also corroborated disturbing things that they had seen themselves. One of them being that Grant and Gracie each had locks on their doors. However, Gracie's was inside of the room so that no one could get in, and Grant's lock was on the outside of his room so he could not get out. Oh, this is all just really even just so sick to try to get through. His friends also stated that they were present during an incident where they saw Gracie sitting on her father's lap and appeared to be, based on their description, inebriated. They said it was like she was asleep, but not asleep because she was just sitting there with her eyes closed out of it. And earlier on that afternoon, she had explained that she was really excited that she got to drink this fizzy drink and made mention of it because it wasn't usually something that she got to do. Their statements based on this evening as well was that they did also see them on the couch in a spooning position. When it came to Grant's friends had also opened up that Grant was very vulnerable with them and admitted that he suffered abuse at home. Often it was under things like control. Food was withheld from him and his father would call him fat. He also limited and controlled the times that he could go to the bathroom, and on several occasions confided in those close to him that he was the subject of violent rages coming from his father. The children did have a child psychologist at one point, and this doctor goes as far as to state that the only interest Aaron seemed to ever have in Grant was that he was a baseball player. And this was this status of look at him. It's my trophy. I have a son who's a baseball player, and I'm an excellent parent because I go to all the games and support this. It's also been stated by multiple sources that although these children were subjected to what's being alleged a very difficult home life, Grant was an outstanding young guy. He's described as fiercely loyal, funny, intelligent, kind, athletic, and most of all, extremely protective of his mom and his little sister. As the kids were getting older and being subjected to all of this court battles simply to try to have more time with their mom, Grant had gotten to the point where he was vocalizing his requests more to be able to testify against his dad and say to the court, I want to see my mom. My mom has not done anything wrong. I'm scared. I have friends and witnesses who have also seen this and can also back up my claims so that you know this isn't just me being a bad kid and making up these monstrous claims. So in one of these later battles, there's this photo that I came across that absolutely broke my heart because Grant had friends who came to court and they were all told, yeah, you will be heard. It's looking good. You're probably going to go home with your mom. And they are jazzed. There's a photo of them before trial where they're standing in the courtroom with their thumbs up thinking like, hey, this is our moment. He's got his best friend. They're gonna finally be able to speak their truth and be heard, especially because they were going to all of the proper people that they thought that they needed to go to, school counselors, members of the church, and it just seemed like nobody was listening. It got to the point where Grant and Gracie actually ran away from home together to go and find their mom. So they're excited about this opportunity to speak, and it never happens. They waited outside to be called as witnesses, and now no one ever came to say it's your turn to talk. The only thing that happened was him and his sister were told, you have to leave and go with your dad. I read a bit about this situation and it made me cry. The kids were so devastated that Gracie was just clung to her mom, screaming, begging not to go. And her dad's lawyer comes in and speaks about her like property to her dad and is like, just rip her off. She's yours. Allegedly, Grant was also told after this situation, you're a big boy. If you're so scared of your dad, you can hold your own and defend yourself. This, I think, was one of the first times that this loss not only affected Grant and Gracie, but since they had their close friends who were seeing this injustice happen, they became just as enraged. I mean, who do you turn to? They even stated that they themselves also went to the counselors at the school to be like, like maybe if I say something, there's more credibility and no one just thinks you're making this up against your parents. So they would go to the counselor and then they were told, this is an old issue. There's nothing we can do about it. Everybody needs to move on. So Grant's friend said that from this point, he was like, this is on me. As soon as I turn 18 and I'm legally an adult, I am going to be able to testify against my father because it seems that the courts only respect you if you're an adult and won't take statements from children. Even though he's in his teens, has no record of disobedience or being like a delinquent child wanting to just lie and stir shit up. In the meantime, before his 18th birthday, there are still several different cases surrounding all of this happening at different times. Angie doesn't just have the court cases where she's trying to just simply get joint custody or custody of her children, but she's also got cases going like, I have proof that my children need protection. So whether that's staying with me or somewhere else, they need protection from the household that they're in right now with their father. This is another just sickening turn of events. Despite statements from witnesses who were at the house, parents who were being told from their children what Gracie and Grant were telling them, and their own counselors saying that they are doing their best to work through trauma, but they're so fearful of their father that's being hindered. Despite all of this, Judge Deanna Johnson ruled in January 2019 that Angie's claims of abuse were without merit, and she barred her from taking any civil action against Aaron for 6 years from that point, which would be that's still going on until Gracie is 18 years old. So no longer a child that needs protection. We're going to take a little detour into the rabbit hole here. This is why I was there for a really long time, you guys. But again, I think that it's really important. So not pertaining to this case, but just giving you a little backstory on Judge Deanna Johnson here. I came across an article that was talking about this case, and it also touched on a previous case that she has been involved in. So in August of 2017, a 6th grade student was SA'd and R'd by several older pupils in the locker room at Brentwood Academy. After this assault, she was allegedly belittled by her headmaster, and the judge, again, Judge Johnson, ruled that there is no merit and dismissed the case. Her husband is also a senator. It's alleged that he was a part of a cover-up of the SA of a 3-year-old by a teenage Sunday school teacher at the Fellowship Bible Church daycare in Brentwood. Knowing these judges to the connection is also essential, and how they're very protective of, the image of their churches and community. So like I said, Judge Johnson is the wife of the Tennessee Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson, and they are also fellow attendees. I'm going to say attendees because I think people have said members in the past, and that's been a point of contention and a reason for a lawsuit being slapped their way. So they are attendees of the same church. Do with that what you will. Also, while you're digesting that information, I do want to acknowledge that I know that it's hard to digest that there is this type of bias. Like, who would do this? Who would go to these lengths to protect somebody else? You don't want to believe it, but I have seen so much stuff just speaking with families across Canada and the United States to see this, how much injustice happens and how many people are complicit in it. I get it. It's hard to take that turn down the hole. And I do feel like these fundamentalist churches do a really good job at fear and control tactics. It's like a religious abuse. Oh, don't go outside of this. Don't even let yourself think that there's something going on. You're going to burn in the fiery pits of hell. There's so many survivors of situations like this who have come out from, that upbringing and being subjected to that type of control and manipulation and fear. And I've said this before, if there is ever something that you're involved in, there's so many different beliefs and religions, and I respect them all. Do you, whatever makes you happy, whatever, fuels your soul, go with it. But if you're somewhere where you are fearful, and they have a substantial control and hold of your life, run. That's not okay. You gotta run. It's wrong. It's so wrong. I recently came across a podcast and it made me think of this. Control and silencing and threats when you threaten exposing the truth. And the podcast is a hard one to consume. I'm not even done it yet because I have to take it in micro doses. But it's important. Again, I've been trying to steer more of making everybody realize that if we're uncomfortable and unsettled about listening to something, it doesn't make that situation just go away. It just further supports all of the people who are trying to silence the individuals that are speaking out. And particularly this podcast came to mind, and it's called The Ugly Truth About the Girl Next Door. I want to make sure I got that right. Hold on one second. Yes, that's right. She also has an Instagram page too. So if you want to kind of start there, read about the post, and then venture into the podcast when you're prepared. It's hosted by a survivor of child sex, starts with TRAF, ends in icking, okay? A lot of things we can't say here. Child ST ring that was being run by her father and church leaders and members. And these daughters and sons were being passed around, and time with them was purchased and given to her father by his fellow associates. Like I said, it's one of the hardest things that I have listened to. It makes me sick. It makes me sad. It makes me furious all at the same time. But like I said, Even if you can't consume it all, knowing about its existence, taking from it what you can to just know that this happens. And there are so many people who are so scared to speak their truth and who are being silenced. I mean, this woman is getting threats on her life constantly, daily, because she's speaking out. And so even if you have somebody in mind that you can suggest listening to this to, that can help reiterate it back to you and help support the cause, I mean, do what you got to do for your own mental health. But I just do want to make it aware that there is something out there where you can actually hear from a first count experience about what's actually happening. And I think it's important to hear from somebody who's willing to speak about it like this, where you're not getting caught up in the narrative that there's some bunker or dungeon on, Ellen's property, and Lady Gaga and Katy Perry and Oprah and all of them are coming over every weekend. No, that does so much damage to take away from the actual stuff that is happening in your own backyard, in your neighbor's house, potentially at your churches, at the schools. Like, come on, let's actually take tangible evidence here and stories and listen to these survivors speak their truth. Okay, rant over. So the only hope Grant had during this time, since he's not being heard left, right, and center, was focusing on turning 18. And his birthday came, his 18th birthday came June 13th, 2020. 5 weeks later, he was dead. It was on July 20th, 2020, when Grant was killed after being struck by his own vehicle, dragged through the parking lot at the baseball training facility he was going in to train at, and the only witness to what happened was his father. I want to give a little bit of a background into how that day transpired. So it was the early morning hours, July 20th. Grant and his father had planned to meet at his baseball training facility. He trained at the Ward Performance Institute, and this was in Gallatin. I hope I'm saying that right. I even used Google pronunciation. This is just outside of Nashville. According to Aaron, they had both pulled up into the parking lot. They were in separate vehicles. Before they even exchanged any words, Aaron notices that Grant gets out of his vehicle and goes to the back of his truck, so like the back truck bed, to grab his baseball equipment. This whole training, the reason why they were the only ones in the parking lot was this was a private session that was being held at 9 a.m. that morning. It was a session that was scheduled by his father. And I think it's important to bring up that Grant had actually just overcome COVID a few weeks before and recently was diagnosed with asthma. So he was not feeling the best in terms of even just breathing, lung capacity, and was not wanting to go because he's like, I'm going to this private training session and I'm not even able to perform at my best. So days before it was even supposed to happen, Angie messages Aaron and says, I just want it on record that Grant doesn't want to do this, and I don't think he should be going to practice with his lungs in the condition that they are. She didn't get a reply back though. And if you're somebody who has been or knows of somebody who has been in a battle and a situation like this, you pick and choose what you can get, because at the time the kids had gone rogue and were spending quite a bit of time with Angie, so she was taking it. Fast forward to the day of the practice. He's leaving the house and he says to his mom, I don't want to die in Gallatin. She takes this, in the way I interpreted it, was as a fear of having an asthma attack or health related. So she sends another text to Aaron and she's like, okay, well, he thinks he's going to die. One of us needs to be there and at least just sit out in the parking lot and wait. He was closer to this practice. So he was like, she said, if you can't make it, I will, just let me know. Aaron goes. He arrives first, according to statements, and it's about 8:41 in the morning when Grant arrives driving his white Toyota Tacoma. He parked next to his father, and both of their vehicles were allegedly facing towards the Institute building. So their rears were facing the back, and behind them was this rocky ditch area. 2 minutes later, a call goes in to 911 and Grant is seriously injured. Aaron's statement was he sees his son get out, go to the back of the truck. He looks down to look at a work email, and all of a sudden he looks and sees that Grant's truck is no longer beside him, and he sees it rolling into the ditch. He says that he quickly exited his vehicle. He goes and looks. The truck is stuck in the ditch and his son is trapped underneath it, and he immediately calls 911. Here is that 911 call.
Someone County.
I'm trying.
Where's your emergency?
It's 1357 South Water Street. It's off 109. Please hurry.
You said 57?
Please hurry.
Okay, what's going on?
1357. My son's truck backed over him, and it's rolled over him and drug him into the ditch, and it's on top of him. He's trapped under the truck, and somehow it drug him underneath it. Yes, my son is under it. I'm trying to call 911.
Okay, what's your name?
Oh my God. My name is Aaron Solomon.
And you said
oh
you're
my God.
1357 South Water Avenue, right?
Yes.
How old
yes.
is the male?
He's 18. He just turned 18 a couple weeks, about a month ago. It's my son. Oh my God. Oh my God, this is not good.
Is he awake and
Oh, please
talking
hurry.
to you?
I don't think so. He's not alert, right? No, he's out. And he's trapped. I got 3 guys here, and he's trapped under the truck.
Okay.
Oh my God.
I understand, sir. Stay on the phone with me while we get somebody out there. What's your name?
Aaron Solomon.
All right, Aaron.
Huh?
What kind of vehicle is it?
It's a Toyota Tacoma, and it's the vehicle he's underneath the vehicle.
Okay, I've got that.
And it's.
Okay, I've got that. What color is it?
It's a white truck. That's my son. It's somehow it backed up. Yeah. Yeah, I'm on with 911 right now. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Was your son working on it?
No, he was just getting out of it. We're on an incline, and I guess he didn't have it in park or something, or it wasn't engaged, or. Oh my God. Oh my God, I can't believe this.
Is your son still not responding?
No.
And he's still
No.
under truck. No one can get
Yes.
out from under it.
No,
We've got units en route to you. I'm just asking you questions where we can
Huh?
update them, okay? Can you check and see
Huh?
if he's breathing?
Somebody's telling me that he's coming to.
Okay.
Maybe.
He is waking up.
Maybe.
Kind of keeping still. So he is
Well, he
breathing?
can't. Yeah, he can't move. I don't think he can move. I don't know.
Okay, I understand.
No, he can't move. He's trapped.
Okay, we got somebody en route. Now, when he wakes up, he might
I'm
be
telling
scared.
him, man.
Can somebody just
I'm
get
telling
down
him.
there and talk to him?
Yeah, somebody talked to him. Shit. There's blood. Is he facing up or down? He's facing up. They said he may aspirate. We need to hurry. Oh, my God.
So does he have blood coming out of his mouth?
Yeah, there's blood coming out. Yeah, somehow it drug him down, I think. I don't know whether it wasn't in park or what, or if it didn't engage the brake, or it drug him underneath somehow.
Okay.
They said he's facing up.
Okay.
But he's bleeding from his mouth. So, Grant, turn your face to the side if you can, barely, but be careful.
Don't move him, okay?
We can't move him. We can't move him. Oh my God.
All right, Beeson, they're there. I'm going to let you go, okay?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
So on the call, he goes over it all. He says that the truck rolled back. He's not alert. He's trapped. And he says that he's got 3 guys there who are witnessing this. This statement has been up for debate. The officer that first responded to the scene wrote in his report that he was unable to locate any witnesses, being able to prove the accounts of what actually transpired, if this is exactly how it happened or not, or if there were witnesses, is impossible to do because the owner of the facility was questioned and they didn't have any cameras outside that would have been able to capture the incident. So all of a sudden, Angie is called and she's just been told there's an accident, Grant sustained major injuries and is on his way to the hospital, you need to get here. Tragically, Grant was not able to survive his injuries. He passed away at the hospital. And from the beginning, Gracie and her mom were finding it really difficult to try to comprehend the events that they played out, or how they were being told they played out based on the evidence that they were seeing. One of the things was Aaron saying that he got out and went to the back of his truck to get his gear. And they know that Grant never kept any of his equipment in the back of the truck. It was always behind his seat, like behind the driver's seat, in the back. If you look at the crime scene photos, there are photos of the back of the truck. There are two things that are in the back bed, and it's just two tires. They're taking up the majority of the space, and photos from the back seat behind the driver's side show his equipment. So that question kept coming up, and then the version of events changed. All of a sudden it was, okay, yeah, actually I do think that he was at the back door, driver's side door. And the truck must have pulled him under and drug him without his father hearing any cries of help. 8 days later, because they were just having such a hard time understanding what happened, Aaron and his friend went out with Angie and one of her friends to the scene so that she could try to just grasp it. Like, please make this make sense. How did this all play out? What position was he in? Was anything said? I need to know. He goes over the same story. He's dragged under his truck down this ditch where all of these jagged, rough rocks are. And he was trapped there, and he never went down to see him, because he said that he was on the call with 911 and the other 3 guys were down there. And Angie said one of the things that was most difficult for her and why she wanted to keep going over the events was how intact Grant's body was when she saw him at the hospital. She said at first glance he appeared to look like he always did, and then she sees his face kind of looks like he had been in a fight. And there was some blood in his hair. But other than that, he didn't look like he was dragged across this parking lot, across this asphalt into these jagged rocks. There were no scratches. The nurse at the hospital even gave her a bag of Grant's belongings. In them was his shoes, which didn't have any scuffs or marks on them. His socks were perfectly intact. They weren't full of debris. And this cross necklace that he always wore didn't have a scratch on it. Even his hands didn't have any scratches on them. I think we can all relate. I think every single person watching this video right now agree that we have fallen on a sidewalk, on a street at some point in our life, and just a trip. We've come out with, some injuries on the hands, maybe the knees. I don't think all of us can say that we've been dragged by a vehicle against a parking lot into a bunch of rocks in a ditch. However, I do know friends who have been dragged against asphalt, and you do not come out with not a single scrape in a situation like that. Also, let's just say, for whatever reason, the way it happened, there just wasn't. I mean, I can't even say that and be serious, but okay, let's just say. Keep in mind, the location that Grant was going to, it was about an hour and a half away from where he lived. So he would have been driving his truck steady for an hour and a half, parked for merely seconds. So there wouldn't have been time for all of the engine and all the undercarriage and everything to cool down. Again, no burns, nothing. And it's difficult to try to picture how the dragging even would have transpired, because according to the police report, Grant was laying on his back under the truck. It was the front area of the truck, but he was between the 2 tires. So there was no weight or pressure from the wheels on top of his body. The only areas that Grant was bleeding in was his nose, ears, and an injury on his scalp. According to the medical examiner, the cause of death was cardiac arrest, and it's noted that Grant had blunt force trauma to his head and a traumatic brain injury. The injury charts also support this. It shows that the only injuries to him is one blunt force injury to the back of the head, a bruise on his left cheek, a small bruise on his right hip, and then a larger one to his left side towards his ribs. It's mentioned that bruises, they're usually caused by like an impact of something. So being, physically hit by something. It's not often seen in cases of being dragged across something. That's more of like the superficial scraping of the first, like several layers of your skin. You have a bunch of abrasions and a lot of blood, but not so much bruising. Because of all of these questions, naturally, Angie wants an investigation to Grant's passing. But at the scene, police quickly took Aaron's statement and closed the case. We now know that before Angie had even arrived at the hospital, Aaron had filled out paperwork where he denied an autopsy, denied a post-mortem examination, and did so without even waiting for Angie to be there to consult. The police also released Grant's vehicle back to Aaron. There was no inspection done for any issues in the truck. And I find that really concerning, not only for the police department. I understand that it's not their responsibility to contact the manufacturer to say like, hey, there's a potential recall here. It's the owner of the vehicle's responsibility, but still. And then to learn that Aaron drove the vehicle as his spare vehicle, just with no hesitation for his own safety or anybody else on the road, it makes you think. My mentality would go like, if this was the cause, and I know this is the cause, I would want answers. I would at least be placing a phone call or a strongly worded email to the manufacturer being like, what is the freaking reasoning behind this? Like, you'd want to sue the pants off of them for causing the death of your child. I would. And even if, I had no leg to stand on and wasn't going to go anywhere, I definitely wouldn't be driving the vehicle. This hunk of machinery that's allegedly responsible for taking my child from me, perhaps keeping it for sentimental value, maybe, but driving it without answers as to what happened, no. I guess Angie is now in possession of the vehicle, if I'm understanding the reports correctly. My understanding, it was not easy. There was several searches done at some scrapyards to make that happen, and she's holding on to it for hopes of preserving evidence if and when the time comes. Now, Aaron has been quoted as saying, it's all about the people you know. And that really sends chills down your spine when you're just like trying to understand why a proper investigation wasn't done, and the only statement you get is from the only witness at the scene, who is the father, who has some very unsettling allegations being placed against him, and you don't speak to any of the other family members or friends of the victim. Why are these children constantly being failed? And that's a whole mother effing rabbit hole on its own. Too many obvious signs of cover-up to count, and I'm just going to touch on a few. I am going to encourage you to go over to the Freedom for Gracie Instagram so you can follow everything. And like I said, you're going to be in there for days. Start at the beginning, see for yourself. It's unsettling, but crucial to grasping how big this is. So at Grant's celebration of life, there was a moment that a pastor of the church that the family attended spoke about a moment that he had shared with Grant that stuck with him. And in it, he says, you never forget when a 9th grader makes an appointment to talk with you, and he wants to talk about Jesus. And Grant did. He came into my office and he sat there for over an hour, and he wanted to know how he could draw closer to Christ. And that stuck with me. Those who knew Grant were like, why are you bringing up this appointment? Because they were aware of an appointment. And why are you bringing up this appointment but leaving the very heavy details of the reason behind it? Because Grant told them that he was going to go and meet them, and it wasn't to talk about how he could draw himself closer to Christ. It was for advice and counseling on the abuse that he was receiving at home, allegedly. Now, after getting caught in this whole turn of the rabbit hole, I was just raging after learning that a month after Gracie had released that YouTube statement that we saw a clip of at the beginning of this video. Remember, this is just a snippet of a whole video where she bares her soul and is vulnerable to the world, sharing her trauma. And as a last-ditch effort of being heard and saving herself, because no one was listening every time she tried. So after she, does all that, again, I encourage you, please go watch the video. But right after that happens, the church that this pastor's a part of releases a newsletter where he says, pray imprecatory prayers against those who have mocked the church, accused falsely, sown divisiveness, and threatened the unity of this congregation. He says, do not pay attention to any lies and keep patience, obedience, and promise to this ministry, and guard your heart from vengeful, bitter hatred. He also goes on to say that you can have no pity. Do not even try to pity on a false accuser. Don't allow an emotional testimony supersede the facts of a case. I think that we can read between the lines without actually having the names of the people that he was insinuating actually put in the newsletter. Who would do this to a 14-year-old girl? This pastor did resign from the church that has been, named in all of this. He insisted that it was not because of all the frenzy, but because of a 3-year plan that he had for stepping down.
Yeah. I'm going to have to go ahead and sort of disagree with you there.
In my opinion, the school that these children have attended is no better. Since this has come out, numerous people have spoken about their personal experience with this academy. I'm not going to mention things on here because, lawsuits, very easy to find for yourself. But these personal experiences, in my opinion, just further support what Gracie is saying, what Grant's friends are saying, even from their own personal experience in terms of trying to get their friends help. And it just goes to show that, again, these aren't angsty teens who are just fabricating stories for attention and just to stir the pot. People have come forward to say that even in their own personal experiences, they absolutely believe Gracie and Angie and Grant. They even said that they personally had concerns from what they were seeing themselves, but were too scared to speak up. Their belief was like, okay, who are we? We're going to trust that the proper authority are involved. We're going to trust that the appropriate people within the education system of this academy are going to do the right thing and just leave it up to them. And now they're stuck with these emotions of like, okay, well, had I just gone with that gut feeling, could I have done something different? Could I have changed the outcome here? And we've talked about this before. There's no sense in dwelling on those what ifs. You could do that forever and beat yourself up. And at the time, I'm sure you were doing the right thing that you thought that you could for yourself, your family, for their family. All that can come from this is a learning experience. And that's by making it right now, by listening to Gracie and her story, believing in her, supporting her, speaking up against all of these communities that are harboring and protecting predatory men. I'll correct myself, and women as well, because after listening to the Ugly Truth About the Girl Next Door podcast, it's alarming how many mothers were also very aware of what was going on. I want to share a statement that the headmaster of the school has made, and my understanding is this is on numerous occasions, like in a new school year, so parents see this, and it's just really telling. It speaks for itself.
One of those unusual years that we're going to need your support in a lot of different ways. If you hear something strange, please go to our teachers. If you hear something that you need to address that doesn't sound right, please come to us so that we can give you the truth. I always say, we're not going to believe everything that your kids tell us about you. So please don't believe everything that your kids say about us.
I'm sorry, but I've never gone to a school where that was announced. And if you look at the comments under that post on the Instagram page for Freedom for Gracie, there are parents there that have been like, he did this for a number of years. Like when I saw this, when my children went there, I also kind of had pause, like, is this normal? Are you supposed to, just lay this out there? Like, what is with the secret keeping and the don't believe everything, like against your kids or us? And what is going on behind closed doors that you have this in like a handbook, digital handbook message to parents? It's weird, but it leads into the request from Angie and Gracie supporters that if you were a former parent, it's probably understandable if you're a current parent, if you're a little bit scared, but if you were brave enough to speak or reach out even privately, or a former teacher, current teacher, student, past student, if there's any information that you have that can support Angie and Gracie, please reach out. That being said, I want to give the benefit of the doubt here to the academy. Let's say they truly didn't know. Okay, let's just say that Grant, they don't remember him coming. They also don't remember Grace coming or any of Grant's numerous friends that came. Okay, they didn't know. Now they do because they've been involved in lawsuits. So they know, they've read the story. Riddle me this. Why is this man, this father, with these allegations and accusations against him, still attending sporting events at the academy, at home games and away games, with no relatives there, photographed multiple times by parents in the stands being like, why is he here? It's friggin' weird. Now, last year, Aaron filed a lawsuit against his ex-wife and 28 others, alleging that they had all taken part of and participated in this smear campaign, falsifying these allegations against him online. Gracie and Angie's supporters have been relentless, though. They had a huge win by, I want to say huge because at least she's not in the custody of her father, who she clearly fears and does not want to be. She is now no longer in his custody. However, she is no longer formally in her mother's custody either. My understanding is she is with a family who is fostering her, and she is very thankful to be in that situation as opposed to the other one that she was in. And I just want to, before we end this with ways that you can support, is something that Shannon Ashley brilliantly pointed out in one of her blog articles on this case, is that there may be some skeptics out there. There may be people who see Gracie's video statement and this heavy accusations and say maybe she believes it because it was fed to her. There could also be people that are just like, oh, it's a teenager, she's being rebellious. I've been rebellious. My rebellion never came in that form. And you need to remember that having influence and brainwashing to the degree of a child believing that something happened to them when it truly didn't requires a lot of time and breaking down and manipulating. And this whole entire case and story started, and to this day still is in battle of Angie not having her children, not having that time, having supervised visits. At what point was she constantly being able to tell and feed information to her children in a narrative that they would be able to repeat consistently, separately, to different friends? I don't know how that would be possible. Like I said, if you want to get involved, I will have the Instagram linked below. There is a GoFundMe that you can donate to. If you're a longtime viewer here, I do always want to remind everybody the costs associated with battles like this. I mean, this has been going on for years prior to trying to just open a reinvestigation for Grant and even having a court listen to Gracie and validate her accusations of abuse. Don't forget to go check out the podcast Ugly Truth about the girl next door. Also, I remembered as I was going through this story, I also saw that Rachel Shannon also did a YouTube video on this. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet. You guys know I like to do that after if I'm going to cover the same case. So go check her out. Go check out the video. Like I said, there are so many twists and turns. There's so much that I can't even get to in one video. So you might see something completely different, a completely different structure in Rachel's. Go read and listen to the blogs. You guys, there is so much on this. I'm telling you, the rabbit hole was real. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting. This is it for me today. I love and I appreciate you so much. Gracie, if you will ever come across this, we support you. You might not know this community at all, but you will. We call ourselves the Sippendales. We are fierce and we have your back. So if you see some Sippendale love in your Instagram comments, it's coming from us. We love you. We support you. Let us know how we can help. All right, you guys, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It means the world to me. I love and I appreciate you so much. I will see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon.